It's back. Just one moment. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. It's so good to see everybody's faces on this beautiful Earth Care Sunday. Welcome you all, and it's with quite an honor that we have with us Han Setiawan, Bradley Hill's member, scientist, and he's now pursuing theological education to share with us a theology of animals. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. And I actually like to use the word creation care more so than earth care, just because creation encompasses more than just the earth. And especially as a physicist, I got to think about the planets and stuff, other stuff, other things out there, not just here on Earth. So
I might agree with you.
Thank you. But yeah, so today I'm just gonna briefly discuss sort of this introductory shorter presentation on animal theology, or more broadly, creation theology. Especially as I mentioned earlier, today is Creation Care Sunday, and we as a church and as Christians, as denomination BC USA, we celebrate today as Earth Care Creation Care Sunday, which is the Sunday before or after Earth Day. I will be talking mostly about theology, and so you'll see a lot of biblical scriptures. I'm going to ask for some volunteers to read things. Hopefully it's big enough. But I'm not going to do a whole lot of ethics, right? I'm not going to tell you you shouldn't buy this or you shouldn't eat this, or maybe a little bit of that. But that is up to you, right? This is sort of where I'm just going to present some of the familiar biblical stories and then just have you sort of ponder about it, reflect, meditate on it as you be the church. After the service is over, you be the church out there and you think about all of this and the implications of what we're talking about today. Next one. So first, I want to sort of ask this question. When you think of heaven, when you think of new earth, new creation, new Jerusalem, nirvana, right? Or the afterlife, what do you usually think about? What comes to mind? And what do you usually notice in sort of pop culture depiction of heaven? With
Clouds.
Clouds, yes. Anyone else? When you think of heaven or when you think of the afterlife, what comes to mind?
White robes and wings.
Right. Angels, yes.
I think the Garden of Eden to me would be.
Okay, that's good. Anyone else?
Early gate.
Pearly gates, yes, yes. Anyone else? Okay. And you see this often, right, in sort of cartoons, and you see that in the middle, of course, The Simpsons. Their theology in The Simpsons, they separate the heaven into the Catholic heaven and the Protestant heaven, right? There's an episode on that. And then you see this, I don't know, it's probably too small, on the sort of bottom right, you have Morgan Freeman as God in Bruce Almighty. And you see this sort of like heaven depicted as just really bland, just like wide space. That's one depiction, but also the other cartoons, you see angels, you see humans. What do you notice is missing in these depictions of heaven?
They're living things.
Animals.
Animals?
Yeah.
Plants.
Yeah. So, good observation. When I think of heavens, yes, pearly gates come to mind, but I usually think of heaven, and this is going to be our opening prayer, as the peaceable kingdom, right? From Isaiah.
Yes.
Next one, please. So would anyone like to volunteer to read the opening prayer? Can you see it?
No, not well enough.
All right, then I'll just go ahead and do that. All right. Oh, Carol, go ahead.
The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. and the cow and the bear shall feed. Their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. And the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand on the cockatrice den. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. This is our hope. This is our prayer. May it be so. Amen.
So the reason why I use this, because it has this beautiful image of what the world could be, right? What the world can look like. I personally don't care if heaven is gonna have, rivers that look like a diamond, or I don't care about that. I personally, again, speaking from my personal viewpoint, I hope that the New Jerusalem, whatever the new earth, heaven, Christendom, or the eschaton, that's the cool terminology, is going to look more like this, where we all sort of live in peace, whether you're human or non-human creation. And so, but in order to get there, let's start from the beginning. And so, next slide, please. I know it's okay, maybe it's too small. I should have thought about this. So I just want to revisit some of the stories in the Bible, and we start with the creation narrative. I'm just gonna go ahead and read it since it's kind of too small. So this is taken from Genesis 1, verses 20 to 31. And God said, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky. So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, of every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good, or tov in Hebrew. Where's Jane?
Tov.
Yes, tov. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was tov, it was good. Thanks. Then God said, let us make humans in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created humans in his image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good, tov meot. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Just stop there for now. Thoughts, as you sort of, I'm sure this is somewhat familiar, I hope, to most folks here. Perhaps, is there anything that you noticed this time around that you never noticed before, or maybe anything you've learned in the past that you want to share with the group?
What about the tree with the seed and the fruit, and that was what we were supposed to have for food?
Yeah, interesting observation, yes.
no animals, right?
And you mean for,
For food.
that is, yeah, that is an observation, yeah.
Well, the dominion, having
Mhm.
dominion.
How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel like we haven't done a very good job.
What does
And
dominion,
do we even have, I mean, why should we have dominion? Yeah.
okay? What does dominion means to you?
Oh, I guess power, the power of trying to determine something, but
Responsibility.
authority over, there's dominion,
Okay.
authority.
So like a king? Or
Yeah,
something,
yeah.
okay, all right, yes, Diana.
Well, I also was struck by the whole dominion and piece, and I'm thinking we interpret it in one way as stewardship, but in another way, some have traditionally seen it means we can do whatever we want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
anyone else?
See, I think of it more as responsibility
Responsibility, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
to care for.
Yeah, doing the
And
right thing.
responsible, yeah. Yeah,
Because I didn't include it here, but of course, there are other verses who would talk about how we are supposed to till and give, you know, the creation, the garden, right? Yes, that goes along with that responsibility. Mhm. Okay. Before I go through the content, I'm gonna read one more passage, and this time it is next. The curses, which is the I call the fall narrative, right? The Genesis fall narrative, part of it. Then the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this that you have done?" The woman said, "The serpent tricked me and I ate." The Lord God said to the serpent, "Because you have done this, cursed," Hebrew for arar, "are you among all animals and among all wild creatures. Upon your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel." To the woman he said, "I will make your pangs in childbirth exceedingly great. In pain you shall bring forth children. Yet your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you." And to the man he said, "Because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree about which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread until you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. Okay, so the context here is, of course, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Eve and Adam, you know, ate the forbidden fruit because of the snake or the serpent. And then this is sort of part of the punishment or the consequence. So again, same question. What do you notice in this text that perhaps you've never noticed before? Or again, if you want to share anything with the group about this particular, you know, any wisdom, any insight you might have.
I'll point out some things that
Yes.
I've pointed out in class. Okay, so we've got a few divisions going on here between humanity and God. They're no longer in a good relationship. Also, broken relationship between human and human, between the man, there's only the man and the woman at this point, and between humans and the natural world, you know, the ground. And I noticed that you've you know, put in the word for curse or pointing that out. It's like the serpent is cursed, the ground is cursed. The humans are not. They are punished.
Yes.
But that word curse is not used.
So in other words, who messed up in the story? The humans. But who got cursed because of humans?
The animal.
And the ground.
And the ground.
Right?
The ground. Yeah, the earth.
And so even though go ahead, sorry, I don't wanna, yes, go ahead.
It's just interesting that, God said, from dust you came and from dust you shall return.
Mhm.
Nothing about heaven. There.
Yeah. Yes,
Oh, I never noticed. The other use of dust is the serpent is gonna eat dust.
that's true. I mean, that can be a whole sermon right there, yes. Anyone else perhaps notice something new or different this time? And here is an depiction of the other way, right? Of, as you know, classic image, angels with swords. Yeah, I mean, I think that's an interesting observation, right? That because of really humanity, that the whole creation got messed up. Again, as a scientist, do I believe that the creation and the fall narrative was historical, literal fact? No, I'm just gonna point that out right now. But does it mean that I don't believe it as truth? Also, no, I do believe that we can look at stories, we can look at literature, especially divinely inspired literatures like Genesis, and say, what can we learn about our own, about our relationship with God, with our creator, with the rest of creation, also amongst ourselves? What can we learn from the Genesis narrative about all of this thing? So, and of course, I think equally importantly, as Jane pointed out, that at that point, relationships in the creation just got messed up, right? All of a sudden, and someone noticed earlier that, oh, we're supposed to only eat plants and seeds and fruits. But after this, even though it still doesn't, God doesn't say you're gonna eat meat, you started having stories and observations and such in which people would kill animals, right? So that's sort of part of it. Many theologians would say that originally we were not designed to eat meat, and yet after the fall, we started noticing that humans started to eat meat. Hey, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see. Next, yeah. Which brought me to this beautiful sort of painting. We all know where, I hope we know where it's in the Sistine Chapel, which is very, I mean, when I prepared the slides, I wasn't thinking things was gonna happen. But, this is the creation of Adam by, I guess the English pronunciation is Michelangelo, from the 16th century. What do you notice in this painting?
I'll
If
be
you
a
can
wise
describe it.
guy here. Everyone knows this painting, but nobody, unless they're looking at it, can answer the question. God is wearing a pink mini dress. Quiet now.
I didn't notice that either until God said it.
How many things is a connection?
Connection, yes.
Yeah.
So how is God and human, I mean, so if you were to describe who are the main sort of characters in the painting, who are them?
It looks like Adam.
Adam is
Man.
represents man, but there's
There's a bunch of.
beings along with God.
Yes.
Not
There's some
just
people,
God.
there's.
Sort of like angel.
Yeah.
But Adam is by himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly, but he's on the earth.
Is on earth, yeah. So, well, and we can argue because Adam was made in the image and likeness of God. That's why they kind of look like humans, both of them, God and also even the angels. But if we follow the creation narrative, this would have been day 6, right?
Yeah.
So why is Adam by himself? And also keep in mind, it was Adam as in earth creature and not necessarily a man, right? If we look at the Hebrew, that's sort of another thing that we can talk about that. But where is all the animals and the trees? I mean, you kind of see grass in there, right? But why is it just human? Right? In other words, part of why we get, why we're here today is because for so long, we sort of see, let's just, that's good.
Okay.
We sort of see creation as this beautiful scenery background, right? As wallpaper, where the main characters, the main actors is human. All this creation, they're just in the background, right? Well, we are at the center of everything, and it's all about us. Even the existence of God is for humanity, right? When you hear about Jesus and how he died, for who? For us. It's as if we were defining Jesus as Jesus' existence as literally for us. Which again, if that's your theology, that is one theology. But I just want to point that out. And next, please.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I think you have to also consider what kind of branch of Christianity Michelangelo believed in.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very important. That also reflects on his painting.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes. Thank you for that. Yes, of course. So I don't know if you've ever heard this term. It's very fancy. It's called anthropocentrism. Anthro means human. Anthropo means human. Centricism means centered. Another sort of less fancy word is humanocentrism. So the idea that we are the center of the whole created things, right? We are the center of the creation. And this was one of the things that was, I mean, of course, the concept itself has existed for a long time, but in 1967, a professor, a historian professor at UCLA, and at some point he taught at Stanford and Princeton, Lynn White, he wrote a paper, The Historical Roots of Our Ecological Crisis, and submitted it to the Science Journal, which is also now a magazine. And in it, he actually argued that looking at the history of humanity, sort of this Judeo-Christian religions, and especially he called out Christianity because he himself, I believe, was a preacher's kid. He called out Christianity as the most anthropocentric religion the world has seen. And so I'm just gonna read some of these things. So the article was sort of, at first, he sort of started by saying, well, of course, all forms of life, doesn't matter if you're human, you're animals, when you exist in a context, in a place, you're of course gonna modify your environment, your surrounding. But it has never been this bad, as in, especially after the industrialization. Yeah, no worries, bless you. The human's relationship with the natural environment, even though it has always been dynamic and all that stuff since the Middle Ages, even before, but the Industrial Revolution, it sort of brought this fundamental turning point in our ecological history. And well, I mean, some of us, even myself, I would argue that, I have a lot of faith in that, the sciences would help us, hopefully, and technology would help us sort of steer ourselves away from this ecological crisis that we're in. In the 67, in the 70s, he was arguing that even science will not save us unless we change our mindset, right? Because, next one, sorry. Here this. Because if our mindset is this, I put a quote, I'm gonna read it. So he wrote, God planned all of this, which is the order of creation, explicitly for man's benefit and rule. No item in the physical creation had any purpose, save to serve man's purposes. And although man's body is made of clay, he is not simply part of nature. He's made in God's image. So two two sort of big points there, right? If our mindset is still telling us that all of creation is made for us, including God, and if we, I hope, are we familiar with the Imago Dei as a concept? We are created in the image of God, in the likeness of God. If we consider that as an excuse for us to feel superior from the rest of creation, then what he's arguing is we're messed up. We're just not gonna ever recover from this. Doesn't matter how much science and technology you can throw at the environment. If we keep this two mindset, we're doomed. That's just what he's arguing. Let's see.
It's quite explicit. God gave us dominion over.
Right, and we'll look at some of that, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and next one? Why am I doing the time? Okay, like
Yeah.
half an hour,
Well,
less than that?
well, no, you have a little over half an hour.
Okay,
Yeah, and as long as people keep talking, that's good.
and so, like I said earlier, so then anthropocentrism or humanocentrism, or this idea that man is at the center, when we theologize that we put ourselves in the center of everything, the danger of that is twofold. The first one is that it gives us a false sense of identity, and again, this sort of like superiority feeling, right? Even though in Genesis, it says that God formed both animals and humans out of the ground, from dust, right? There is this sort of commonality between us and the rest of creation. And again, if we think that we're superior, remember the curses. Because of us, the rest of creation was cursed. Is that a superior thing? I don't think so. And we see that over and over again throughout the Bible. The fate of humanity, think about, we're gonna read eventually the flood narrative. How what we do is really tied with, or how we do is really tied with the well-being of the creation, right? If the creation suffers, we suffer. And so the idea that we are somehow superior is also, in my opinion, is false. And then let's talk about the have dominion clause in Genesis, right? The danger of anthropocentrism is sort of this, it gives us false understanding of our role. What does it mean to have dominion over animals? And some of us have chimed in earlier. Let's look at, I know it's really too small, I'm so sorry. But Genesis 2:5, which is the second creation story. If you're familiar with Genesis, there are two different creation stories, right? The first one that is day 1, day 2, day 3, and the second one that is a bit more quick. They are presented literally side by side for us, for whatever reason it was, but it is there. Genesis 2 says, when no plant of the field was yet in the earth, and no vegetation of the field had yet sprung up, for the Lord God had not caused it to rain upon the earth. And it says, and there was no Adam to till the ground, to till Adamah. There was no earth creature to till the earth. There is no soil creature to till the soil. So even that sort of gives you a hint that our existence is really to till the ground, to sort of manage, to steward, right? That's sort of one part of it. And then it became even more obvious 10 verses later, Genesis 2:15, the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to till it and keep it. I don't know how obvious could it be more. I mean, it's literally there. One of the books that I, and I'm sure Shane would know, Phyllis Trible, God and the Rhetoric of Sexuality. Even though it's about God and the Rhetoric of Sexuality, Dr. Trible actually discusses a bit about the creation narrative. And I thought this particular sentence was quite meaningful. So she said, it was distinction without opposition, dominion without domination, hierarchy without oppression. That I think should describe our relationship with the rest of creation instead of dominion in a sense of like, let's just dominate and oppress, right? So let's see, hold on, not yet. Okay. Any thoughts so far? Any question about anthropocentrism or humanocentrism? This is I know it's a big concept, and I just want to make sure you are aware of what it is and what it is not.
So is this
Yes.
mainly a Christian and the other religions don't have as much of an impetus on our dominion over
No,
the other religions are more.
So- yes, good question. So the question was whether this is only a Christian thing, more or less, right? And the answer is because the creation narrative is, of course, it's a Jewish, at first it is in the Hebrew scripture, right? And also it is also somewhat adopted by the Muslims. We share that. So I am not here to talk on behalf of the other religions, but as a Christian, I can only speak on behalf of Christians and our theological traditions. But because of just the way colonialism and all, we talk about the intersections of everything and who has been in power in the past, 500-600 years, bless you.
Sorry.
Christians, I would argue, play the biggest role in the destruction of the environment or the creation. So theologically, it's not just with us, but we bear a lot of responsibility here. Anyone else? Yes.
It would seem to me that the interconnectedness of nature and ecology and understanding of that has really been a prominent theme and learning over, say, my adult lifetime. Do we find in the scriptures the same idea? I mean, we were talking here about the dominion and the hierarchy in nature and creation. Are there other indications that, hey, we're all in this together and there is an interconnectedness that we need to honor?
There are, yes. So indirectly and directly, yes. I mean, a lot of indirect languages, and we'll cover some of that later, especially in the New Testament. The way Jesus was presented, for example, has a lot of animal languages, has a lot of sort of flesh. And again, the flood narrative, I think, is going to make it a bit more obvious about why what we're doing is kind of wrong. So keep that question in mind. I hope we'll answer that through presentation. Are we good? And just one more slides on, oh, sorry. Oh, hold on. Yep, just, I guess we
What
didn't
happened?
go back yet.
Okay. Wait a minute. I'll go back in. Yeah, you're right, though. You should grab it from me. Here.
Yes, because I put the animation sort of like,
Yeah.
I just want to, this is sort of what I covered, distinction with collapse. I know it's kind of too small. Again, you can watch that, and if you email Carol, I'm happy to share the slides.
Yeah,
Okay, so next.
beautiful.
So now this is going to be a lot of animation.
Yeah.
This is sort of the consequences, in our modern day, right? Kyrie eleison means Lord have mercy, right? So just keep hitting. We see all this, an extinction, right? What is it? Hold on. What does it say? There are around 1 million species that currently face extinction. Since 1970, the average species population size has declined 68%. A lot of wildlife is just going away as we speak, right? And then next. And of course, we see images like this, right? I'll keep going. This is local. I don't know if you remember a few years ago, right? How we treat even animals that we consider pets, right? The puppy mill in Virginia somewhere, right? Keep going. I thought this is why, so I don't know if you can see this, but this is a bird, dead bird, and they open the stomach and see all this plastic.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then next one. And then I think this is the last one. You see animals now, instead of living in their habitat, in the Garden of Eden. Now they're living in our trash, right? So garbage dump like that. And again, this is not everywhere. And we still have forests and all that stuff. And we really have good people trying to prevent this or remedy this. But just look at what we've done. This is what we did. So yeah, indirectly or directly. Maybe we don't, feed birds with plastic. Of course, I hope none of us do that. But what we consume, all of that contribute to this crisis. And not just global warming. I mean, this is immediate, right? Animals are dying. Next. Now, it's probably still too small. Is it too small? Okay.
I did have one chat comment. But
Oh, go ahead. No,
well, it's about any comment about how our language is male-oriented, our religious language.
Oh, yes. That's another, that can be a whole other, yeah. So let's read the Genesis flood narrative, which is from Genesis 9. Actually, can you see this? I just want to have it read in someone else's voice.
As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark. Going?
Yeah, keep going.
I establish my covenant with you that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth."
And next one. There's still one more slide. Sorry. Is that? Yep.
Yeah.
When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth."
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I could have just put one paragraph, maybe like a couple of verses, but I decided to include the whole speech that God made. And I had to keep checking over and over again. Why is there so many redundancies? It keeps getting, I make this covenant with you and all flesh and all living creatures, and I have this rainbow thing that's gonna, be in the sky or whatever. And then 2 verses later, God said, "This is my covenant with you and all living flesh and all living creatures, and I'm gonna put my bow in this that looks like a rainbow and whatever." And then 2 verses later, so what are your thoughts? What do you notice that you perhaps never noticed before?
The importance of the topic.
Mm-hmm. So can you elaborate more on that? What do you think is important?
Because the global warming
Yeah.
is diminishing the animals for construction, and I think the construction has a lot to do with it.
Mhm.
All over the world is diminishing animals. But that's the importance of the topic. Well, United States is the leader of the world.
Yeah.
In the United Nations discussing the topic.
Mhm.
So you are repeating this now with your slides. And so you're emphasizing the topic.
Yes. Yes. I mean, usually if things get repeated over and over again, it means
Yeah.
it's gonna be something important there.
Michael Gibson.
Yeah, I just wanted to be sure and mention here that there is a movement afoot on the part of the new administration to change the Endangered Species Act, which would effectively remove the requirement that habitat for endangered species be protected. So that essentially the only thing you could do is if an endangered species was in danger of immediately being destroyed itself, you might have to protect them, but otherwise you would not. And this is sort of in keeping with the notion that there is no such thing as global warming or whatever. It's not a threat. And there obviously is a schism, which you're probably getting to, and I don't want to anticipate what you're going to say, Han, but there is obviously a schism in Christianity between those who sort of focus on revelation, that the only thing that matters is, what's going to happen later, so we can disregard all what's going on in Earth right now. And those of us who, like you, have a sort of commitment to this sort of Christianity that we've been describing here in the covenant. I'll shut up. I just want to make sure and mention that about the Endangered Species Act.
Thank you, Michael. Yes, Diane.
I would also like to say it's interesting in this passage that they emphasize, and by redundant speech, that animals are included as part of creation. God's promising to creation, not just to man. As in the first part of Genesis, it was a promise to mankind, but this is a promise to all creation.
So I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
It's true.
And again, it's just repeated. So again, I thought I was dreaming or something. I was just making stuff up. Why is it pretty much repeated? I don't know, 6 times? This language of, it's not just with you and your descendants, but also all the living creatures that come with you, right? Anyway. And yes, Don.
Is there any significance in the fact that God promises not, he only promises not to destroy everything?
Is there any significance?
He doesn't promise that we won't screw up,
Oh, sure, yeah.
a big part of Earth. But
Well, I
something
think,
will be left.
yes, it's significant in the sense that if we see destruction all around us, it's not God's doing. I think that's how I see it, right? It's not like God is putting plastics in that word. No, someone else did. Anyway, that's food for thoughts. Next. And I love Barbara Brown Taylor. I almost put my selfie with her in this slide because I took a selfie. I had when I was in my previous grad school, I had lunch with her and some other students, and I sat next to her and I was like, let's grab a selfie. So yeah,
she will be with us next week.
And I'm gonna take another selfie. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is taken from one of her sermons, and this is that she published many books on her sermons, and this is one of them from 1995, and I'm just gonna read it off. So God's will for us is life, not death, and that includes life for every living creature, not just us 2-legged ones, but also the 4-legged ones and the winged ones, and those with no legs or wings at all. God's covenant includes lizards and centipedes and tadpoles and fireflies. It includes all species disappearing daily off the face of the earth. All of them are covenant partners, heirs of God's promise, just like we are. And those of us who understand our kinship with them tremble to think what we have done, killing off those to whom God has promised life. Actually, the whole sermon is quite wonderful. So if you have the book, it's from Gospel Medicine, page 33. You should read. And a quick little plug, go ahead. Next week, come back for her.
It looks like we'll be meeting in Covenant Hall, just so
Yes.
you know, but yeah.
So she will come here or somewhere here for adult ed at 9 15 a.m. If you want to get a good spot, good seat, make sure you come early. But she will also preach at the 10:30 a.m. service. So you do not want to miss Barbara Brown there. All right, so
Does she bring her books so we can purchase it or?
I don't
think
know,
so,
but you can find them
on Amazon,
at
yeah, or whatever.
or
like
local
Amazon.
bookstores or used bookstore, whatever it is. It's actually, she's a she's a great preacher. I mean, a bunch of awards on preaching, but also she's a great author in general.
Okay. Thank you.
Christian, but also she's at some point was a professor of world religions and all that stuff. So she's really great. So we've seen all that. What are all, our alternatives when we see creation? What else can we hold on to that maybe is less destructive, less toxic to the environment? Next one. Before that, I'm gonna read a passage from the Colossians. So this is now we're in the New Testament territory. Anyone want to read this, or Carol, do you want to read, or? Sorry, I should have planned this better. I'm so sorry.
Come, this is wonderful.
Colossians 1:15-20. He, Jesus, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or powers. All things have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he might come to have first place in everything. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his cross.
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Reason why I like this passage, because it uses this sort of like generate all things language. And again, it might seem like I'm cherry picking, maybe I am, but and also I also do not like the male language, just Jesus anyway, but yeah, so what do you notice in this verse about, especially I want you to reflect on what is the purpose of creation through this passage. Colossians 1:15-20.
Well, the fullness of God, the kingdom of God would be
Right.
bringing us together through Christ, yeah.
Yes. Who was creation? Like, who is it made for? For God.
All creation.
All creation is made for who? God. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Your church, this branch of Christianity, perspective, does it believe that Christ is God or the Son of God?
Oh my goodness, that's the answer is both, right? And that's part of the mystery of our faith, right? Okay. Jesus is God. God is Jesus. Jesus is God.
Okay.
But also we see that Jesus is also depicted as Son of God, son of human, or is it son of man? Sorry, translation in my brain. Son of David, right? So like a lot of these are language, but yes, Jesus is God, God is Jesus, yes.
Thank you.
Anyone else have thoughts on this before we move forward?
Yeah, if I could just add there, Han, it seems to me that last sentence was God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things. And we have an idea in our I guess more traditional faith that the whole purpose, that we need to be reconciled with God. as in humans, and that Christ came to effect that. But essentially, what this is saying is that it's not just us, it's all of creation. All of God's creation needs to be reconciled with God.
Yeah. And we have, yes, I agree with you. And we have languages in the Bible which it says the whole creation groans, right? It's not just us that, I mean, the whole creation is awaiting this redemption, not just humans, right? And so if we were to limit Christ's mission as just for us human, then why, then the whole universe is a lost cause. I mean, it's just looks like you got it wrong there. Diane, no, okay, all right.
Later.
And then I just want to point out here, the art piece, you have Jesus depicted as lamb. And that's actually a discussion among some theologians. Would it be possible that Jesus may be incarnated? In other words, that the animal kingdom, the non-human animal kingdom, has their own version of Jesus. That maybe Jesus, again, I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying even theologians like Karl Barth at some point contemplated about this. Could it be that the gospel or the incarnation exists in the animal kingdom that we just don't know because, well, we're humans? Could it be that God chose to reveal God's self to a bunch of other species that we're just not aware of? Again, I'm not saying I agree with that or disagree with that. I'm just saying it is something to think about. Yes.
When you put this in the context, as you mentioned at the very beginning of the universe, Earth is just a tiny little speck. What, that makes a lot of the things going on here, very important, less important, not important at all.
Good question. What do you think?
Well, I think it's very easy for us to overthink our importance, including the importance of our species and maybe even our planet.
Yeah.
But we don't really have much control over anything more than where we are. And we could at least try to do the best we could with that.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, what I don't want, or at least what I personally don't want to see is us thinking we're so important that we think that we think of planet Mars as a planet that we should conquer, right? That's kind of, just saying, but, so, and thank you for that. And I would also point out that there are a lot of images of God in sort of this animal language, like mother hen, eagle. So again, something to think about. Why is it that even Jesus described God or himself in sort of animal language? Okay, next. And so I want to introduce, unless you already know about this, instead of anthropocentric or humanocentric, human-centered view of creation, I want to present another way to look at the creation, and that is through theocentrism. Does anyone know what theo means? God. So God-centered views, and I have to credit Andrew Lindsay. This is the book. Highly recommend if you have some extra time to read that. Now, the first part of the book is about theology. The second part is about ethics, which I do not cover in this presentation. So again, yeah. And so in this book, Andrew Lindsay, who is also a scholar, historian, all that, he argues that creation exists from all these verses, or all these passages. Creation exists for its creator, for God. And that humans may, and I'll talk about Imago Dei later, humans may be distinct from non-human animals, but not everything is made for humans. And that human pleasure may not necessarily be the objective of creation. This is huge, because earlier in the anthropocentric views of creation, we're saying, well, the birds came first and the thing and the trees, whatever, because God was preparing the world for the arrival humans. Well, a theocentric view is saying, well, God can do whatever God wants. It may be for us, humans, so that we live comfortably, but just keep in mind that it may also not be for us, that we're just part of the creation, like the rest of the creation. Another theologian, James Gustafson, said the chief end of God may not be the salvation of man. Now, this is a bit more controversial because, of course, when we look at the Bible, of course, we see a lot of this language of Jesus dying for us. But this guy is saying, well, let's rethink that. Why do we think that we are? Maybe we're not. Who knows? The chief end of God may not be the salvation of man. And of course, since we're Protestant, we gotta say soli deo gloria, right? Everything is for the glory of God. So it's not just us humans, but the whole creation, right? Is for God. As God is, anyway, and then next one. As God is for us. We are for God. The creation is for God as God is for us. God is for creation. Andrew Lindsay said every creature is continually blessed, or it is no creature at all, right? So what it means to be for, right? For us to say God is for creation means God will always be on the side of creation. God will always support creation. And if at any point a created being has no rights with which his creator is bound to respect, there is an end to all moral relations between them. In other words, if we somehow think that God purposely killed a species or an animal, then the whole thing about God is for creation is just not true. So there is this sort of expansive universal purpose of God being for creation. The implication is what I said earlier. If God is for creation, next one. If creation exists for God and God is for creation, how can human beings be other than for creation, right? If God is for creation, sorry, this is sort of like, if God is for creation, then all this destruction we see around us is not caused by God. It's caused by us, which is the part where that's the whole, we messed up on that part, right? If God who created us is for creation, then why can't we also be for creation? Next. Okay, yeah, we're like 3 more slides, okay. And then let's talk about Imago Dei, human as a servant species. It is true that we are created in the likeness and the image of God. But we need to remember that we are created in the likeness and the image of a suffering God. If Jesus is God, God is Jesus, then we are also made in the image of Jesus, who came to suffer. And I'm just going to read this off really quickly. Though he was by nature God, he did not consider equality with God as a prize to be displayed. But he emptied himself by taking the nature of a servant. Some translations use the word slave. When he was born in human likeness, and his appearance was like that of any other man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. And so then when we look at our ministry, it must be like our Creator, must be like Jesus, must be like God's ministry in which we are created after the image of. It must be redemptive, even self-sacrificial to all creations. And Andrew Lindsay sort of closes this chapter by saying, the uniqueness of humanity, in other words, Imago Dei, consists in its ability to become the servant species, to exercise our full humanity as co-participants and co-workers with God in the redemption of the world. So Imago Dei isn't this, oh, you're superior because you're created in the image of God. Imago Dei means you are sort of like represent ambassadors of God to do God's work on earth. When animals and plants see us, they see the image of God. Again, whether you believe in that theology or not, they see the image of God. And so we better be a good representation of that image. Next. Next one.
Excuse me.
Yes,
Can you repeat the suffering part again?
yes. In what sense? So as you know, sort of Jesus came to the world incarnate and all that stuff to suffer for the sake of the creation, right? So then if we're made in the image of God, in the image of Christ, then we ought to sort of emulate, we ought to sort of try to do the same kind of ministry that Jesus did, because we are created in the image of God.
So we are also to suffer because Jesus suffered. Is that?
I don't say we must suffer. But if at any point it calls us to suffer, like Jesus did, and Jesus answered yes to that, because of Jesus' love for the whole creation. And so I think what I'm after is that we must possess that love such that not only we help and we take care of the creation, but also if need be, we become sort of like Jesus, sort of self-sacrificial sacrifice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Next. Liberation theology. Another, again, I'll just go through this quickly. It's a concept that is, I think, again, it's not new, but it sort of became formalized by the publication of this book, Gustavo Gutierrez, The Theology of Liberation. The concept is that if we are to look at Christ's ministry, we must look that Christ was a poor, sort of incarnated into someone who is on the margins of society. And such, when we look at the mission and ministry of Christ, it's not just souls going to heaven, which again, we believe that, but also if the gospel is to be good news, it has to be good news for the poor, right? So it has this worldly implication. And there are many variations, Black liberation, womanist, feminist, all that stuff. The criticism has been that it focuses solely on the human experience. So far, when you hear liberation theology, you always hear it in the context of humanity. Christology is only anthropology. Can that be changed? Next. Upside, yeah. Go ahead, next. So can we maybe think about extending this to also animals? Again, I'm just throwing things at you, maybe something to think about. Extend the scope of Jesus' incarnation to all flesh. After all, First John said the word became flesh. And that's sort of what this book is arguing. Deep incarnation theology, right? That incarnation of God isn't just necessarily, yes, to human, but also it is an incarnation to our biological existence, system of nature, and how that might change the way we see the world. Yeah. And then the next one is sort of maybe extend the definition of oppression to include non-human animals. When we think about Matthew 25, when I was hungry or when I was thirsty and all that stuff, can we include animals in that image, right? After all, animals exist with us as neighbors, and yet they're voiceless and marginalized. Next. And then go ahead, next. Oh, yes. Just 3 quick things. Do you know who this is? Saint Francis, which is why we have this liturgy of blessings of the animals. Saint patron of animals and ecology.
Beautiful today, by the way.
Yes.
Chilly.
And I just wanted to point, since I promised this in the advertisement, so I really gotta go through this. So Saint Francis, of course, famously known for really caring for all animals. He was born rich and all that, decided to embark on a life of poverty and modesty and all that. There are a lot of stories of him talking to animals. In fact, at some point, he advocated for priests and preachers to preach to the animals as well, preach the gospel to the animal. He is famously known for calling animals as his brother and sister. And of course, Saint Francis is the name of the Pope that recently, the chosen name of the Pope that recently departed, because of not just to animals, but also all sort of poor people and all that. So again, he sees animal as our equals, siblings. Next. Now, does anyone know who that is? There you go.
Says Thomas Aquinas.
Well, it's in Latin, so now he has a different view. To him, animals do not have rational soul. And so once they're dead, they're gone. Now, a lot of misunderstandings about Thomas Aquinas. I believe that he believes animals have feeling and can feel pain and all that. But he's saying because the soul is not rational, once they're dead, the soul cannot separate like us human. We have a rational soul according to him. And so when our body dies, our soul separates. Animals, not so much. And he also subscribes to the idea of, again, all the creation is created for us humans. So anthropos, which again is not uncommon at his time. Still. And so the implication is that heaven, there is no animals, there is no plants in heavens. That's just because irrational soul, which animals and plants have, he considers as imperfection. So no imperfection in heaven, no humans, no animals. Last line. John Calvin. He also believes in anthropocentric view of creation, but we have two different versions of Calvin. In his writings, he's like, oh, animals like angels and like plants are sort of this theater, this painting that humans can use to learn about God, who God is. So that when we see the creation, background scenery, we see God. So that's actually quite progressive for his time. But if again, I can share this paper. In his sermons and in his letters, he uses animal language to demean his enemies. He calls bishops as apes, monks as asses. Yes. He calls the whole Roman Catholic ordination rite as circus. So a lot of that powerful. So you see this two versions of John Calvin. Next. So my question, and that's it. How will you see animals and the rest of creation differently? And I think that's something to think about, especially on this Creation Care Sunday. Thank you.
We look forward to for you in the future. We haven't ever had a program with Han before, and this is just wonderful. And we
Little too long, sorry.
appreciate, your presentation on this really important day, and that hope the rest of you can appreciate the beauty of today as we go forward. May your blessings be with us, and come next Sunday with Barbara Brown Taylor to hear what she has to tell us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Han, maybe she'll show your selfie with her.
Yeah. Did we finish up really good?
Yes. Just thank you so much. Thank you.
Is it handed?